All right, here we go. Hi everyone, Andrew Johns here from Canaccord Genuity, and I'm excited today to have my guest on our first podcast. This is episode number 1, and my good friend I've got good friend Bart Jaworski here from Group 11. Bart, welcome to the first podcast.
Thanks, I'm honored to be here on the very first show. This is awesome.
Well, you're only the 14th person I had to invite, and I finally got someone to say yes. So.
Okay, well that's good to know as well.
Thanks for taking a risk with me.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, of course. But no, Bart and I, you and I have known each other for a long time. We got to know each other when I first got into this business, and at the same firm, and we've stayed friends over the years. And so I thought, what we're going to do is talk today a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the Zinc sector, which a lot of people aren't familiar with, and then finally finish that off with Group 11, the company that you founded. But let's start with yourself. So you were born here in Canada? I don't think so, right?
No. I was born in Warsaw, in Poland. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, long story short, we escaped when I was 7. We lived in Austria for a year. And then we decided to come to Canada. We had the option to go into the US, Canada, South Africa, or Australia. And there was a lot of political turmoil at the time. There was a lot of people that were sort of leaving around that time. And we decided to come to Canada. Straight to Winnipeg, lots of snow and huge cars. That's what I remember. So we stayed there for a few years and then moved to Saskatoon. Okay. And I love Saskatoon. Saskatoon's a great town.
Yeah, me too.
It's great. We lived in Lakeview there, and then did the first year of high school in grade 9 in Aiden-Bowman. Okay. And then we moved to Vancouver in 1987. So I've been in Vancouver ever since.
And actually Tsawwassen, right?
Yeah, it was always actually Tsawwassen, So I went to Tsawwassen, ended up going to UBC, ended up becoming a geologist, yada yada. And now I live in Ireland because I met an Irish girl. I met Anne in Australia in 2002.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And then I worked for Raymond James. So that was when I met.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how long have you lived in Ireland for now?
7 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Late 2011 we got there. It was doom and gloom. People were still fairly depressed, right? Yeah. I think somebody from Raymond James said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing? You know Ireland's broke, right?" Yeah. And I said, "No, that's I know what I'm signing up for here." Yeah. And that's the case. I think it was doom and gloom, and it wasn't until about a year after I got there, or Anne and I and the kids got there, that things started to turn around. Yeah. And REIT legislation got introduced around that time. Green REIT just went public, I believe, actually through my old shop, Davy. They raised quite a significant amount of money. And that was kind of the bottom. And it's been on a tear ever since. The Irish economy's really picked up. It's been probably the fastest growing economy in Ireland for a number of years now running. Wow. It's a small economy, but it's really booming. And I'd say over the last 12 months it's tapered off a little bit, so we're probably level, but it's been a real example of a vibrant, entrepreneurial, well-educated population that's really embraced a lot of the entrepreneurial spirit. There's a lot of they call these SMEs, small businesses basically, and
small medium enterprises.
Medium enterprises, exactly. So there's a lot of those in Ireland. There's a lot of that type of spirit around. Yeah. And Ireland's been doing fairly well. There's problems, obviously. There's still a huge amount of debt. There's a housing shortage. Yeah. In the country, especially in Dublin.
Housing shortage everywhere, though.
There is, and it's being impacted also by the Brexit issues, right? Because Brexit, if you're a small to medium company, if you're a Deutsche Bank, you probably don't have room to come to Dublin. There's just not enough physical office space in Dublin. Oh, wow. But if you're a sort of a small to medium-sized brokerage firm, financial institution from London, and if you need to get out of London, then you'll probably go to Dublin. That's in fact what has happened. There's been a lot of companies coming over from London to Dublin, and in anticipation, this Green REIT actually started building a lot of these office towers in Dublin. Obviously, they did an amazingly good amount of timing in terms of they timed the market really well, because they started this in late 12 when we had no idea Brexit was, there was no such thing at that time, right?
Yeah, wow, amazing.
So it ended up going well for them in that regard in terms of commercial real estate in the city.
Yeah, oh, and that's really interesting. Well, it's a beautiful country. Let's go back to your sort of post-youth when you got into university. How did you decide to become a geologist?
It's an interesting one. I haven't been asked that for a long time. My dad's a doctor. I always thought I was going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I was in biology. A bit of a funny story, I guess, which I usually don't share online or on social media or anything. But no, I had in university, I don't know if you remember, you had to telereg.
Okay.
So you basically spend the whole darn day dialing until you finally get through to this automated system, and then you basically try to get your courses.
Yes.
You have these codes.
Oh yes, I remember this now. Yeah.
So I went through that process, and because I did fairly okay in year one, I got fairly early in my telereg, and I got all my biology courses fantastic, right? So I went back to my summer job, which is basically painting my parents' house. And so I was a student painter around that time. Worked for Student Works Painting the summer before. So that summer, the following summer, I volunteered to do my parents' house basically. So what do I do? I forget to pay the $100 to lock in the telereg, which I think you have 10 days to do it after you telereg.
Yeah.
So I only realized this right before September 1st when school's starting. And I realized I was deregistered from all my hard-fought biology courses, and basically had to start from scratch. So year two for me, from university, was a bit of a gong show. And my good friend Dave basically said, "Hey, there's this really cool professor in geology. He swears a lot. He drinks beer. He's awesome. It's gonna be a good course for you to pick up in your sort of because I tried to get back into biology, but all the courses were full. So I was taking sociology and this and that and psychology. And then he said, "Why don't you look up geology? Because there's no geologists in my family background."
Sure. Yeah.
So it's just never really on the radar, right?
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, I just I had a real interest in it.
Wow.
And I just felt right at home looking at the rocks. I loved spending time at the lab, so late hours at UBC and looking at the different specimens, and I just thought it was really fascinating.
So Bart, let's jump into the zinc sector and talk about that for a few minutes.
Sure.
For those folks who aren't familiar with zinc, I really only know it as something that you're supposed to have as part of your vitamin mix. Beyond that, I don't really understand about zinc. So fill me in a little bit on, what is zinc, what is it used for, that type of thing. Yeah,
so zinc is predominantly to make rust-proof steel. So you coat your steel with, you galvanize it with zinc, and then it doesn't rust. So it's useful for construction and cars and white goods, meaning dishwashers and washing machines and things like that. Oh, wow. And then on top of that, it's a nutrient, like you said, so it's critical for embryonic growth, and we all need it, for part of your metabolic process. Zinc is big on that. Yeah. And then zinc is also starting to be used in batteries and fertilizers, which are two sectors which I think have some real legs. Potentially can move the market over the next year or two. Yeah. Especially on the fertilizer side, because Teck just announced that they're going to start implementing adding zinc to fertilizers in China. It's a big market in China, obviously. The Chinese government has basically said that they'd like to start adding zinc to the fertilizers because it's kind of a worldwide problem. If you think about the last 50 years, we've all been farming, industrial scale farming. What does that do to your soil? It depletes the soil gradually of your nutrients. So all of a sudden you have these depleted soils. Well, you have to put it back in, right? And that's where the zinc comes into your fertilizer. So
and what kind of impact does that have?
Well, it's surprising. It's quite a big impact. So the cost of your fertilizer with the zinc in it now is 4% higher, supposedly, and the yield is 25% higher. So net, it's actually very accretive. It's very worthwhile putting it in.
So this could be a new trend for.
I think it's definitely started in 2012 when the Chinese government decided to go in that direction, made it part of a strategic initiative. Yeah. Teck is now helping them actually execute on that and add the zinc in there, and then the nutritional value of their crops go up up especially. So the local population is going to benefit because they're going to be healthier.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right?
That makes sense, yeah.
And
so the soil is going to get into the plants.
Exactly, and then into sort of you and me. So it's
what does zinc do for our body?
Well, it's just part of the metabolic processes. Specific chemistry, don't ask me.
Okay.
I have no idea. I'd have to ask my dad or something
talk to
about
your dad
that.
or Dr. Oz or something like that.
Dr. Oz might be a good starting point, but it is especially for embryonic growth. It is absolutely critical for that. So I think India is about to embark on this as well, and I think the rest of the world will probably follow suit because I imagine the same types of problems are readily there as they are in China. Right?
Wow. Now you've got a really neat graph that will show the folks here that shows the price of zinc compared to the inventory or something. Can you explain this graph to us?
Yeah, so it's an inverse chart, price versus inventory. So usually when inventories go down, price goes up.
So the black line is what?
The black line is the price,
okay. Which is
US dollars per pound, which is roughly about $1.20, between $1.25 and $1.30 US a pound of metal, pound of zinc. And then the green area is the inventory, so the refined metal, the amount of refined metal out there in the world in LME or London Metal Exchange inventory stocks all over the world. If you add it all up, you get a number, and that number is basically what you track with that green area.
And it looks like it's really low.
It's at a 10-year low, so basically what does that tell you? It means that demand is outstripping supply, and it has been doing so for the last, call it 5-6 years.
Yeah.
To a point now we're at a 10-year low in inventories, which is obviously a bullish signal. The last time we were at this sort of inventory level, the price of zinc was up at over $2 a pound. It's not there now. I think largely
there's probably a lag, I would assume, between when the inventory levels get down and the price starts to accelerate.
That's a good point, but sometimes prices anticipate inventory drops.
Sure.
So it could be a lag, but maybe not. But I think more so, I think there's just a lot of noise around trade war between U.S., China, fears maybe that Chinese economy is slowing down. Obviously that's in the news almost every day, right? So there's those types of worries, and I think that's suppressing the price response that would naturally be there if you just looked at the inventories alone. So what I kind of think, myself personally, what I think is likely to happen is it's probably more likely than not that U.S. and China will find a way forward in terms of some kind of a revised deal, and the trade war rhetoric will subside. And then in the face of maybe all this market turbulence, I think it's likely that the Chinese government steps on the gas pedal in terms of infrastructure spending to sort of spur the stimulate the economy. So some stimulus spending, and that means infrastructure usually, and that means steel and the ergo zinc, right? So it should be net positive, I think, for the further demand growth part of the story. And then on the supply side, actually, there's a lot of mines out there, but guess what? They're running out of ore, and that's been part of the thesis on zinc for a long time. That Lachine back, in my turf, Lachine, Galmoy, two Irish mines ran out of ore. I think it was 2012 and 2015, so they're exhausted. There's a big mine in Australia called the Century. That's also been exhausted, right? And then the big one is China. China's got a lot of mines, but they've recently been shut down by the, we are hearing thousands, because there's a lot of the mom and pop operations in China. But because of the new environmental regs, the new environmental regulations which came in China in late 2017, that has really put a lot of those guys out of business because they just don't comply. And in order to comply, you have to spend a lot of money, which they do not have. So all those little mines have shut down. So your supply has been quite low, despite the fact that historically speaking, zinc price is actually quite elevated right now.
Right. So what are the largest producers? Like you mentioned, Australia and Ireland. Are those some of the largest producers in the world?
Yeah, I mean, Mexico's big. Peru is big. So there's a lot of Latin American countries. Again, China probably produces half of the world's zinc.
Okay.
So there's a number of countries around the world, and then Ireland is probably around number 11 or so in the world.
Yeah.
And it was number one in Europe, number one producer up until Lachine and Galmoy shut down.
Yeah.
But the thing about Ireland, I guess, is that it's rich in terms of the amount of zinc deposits found over the area. So if you look at all the sort of black dots on the map, which are zinc discoveries since the 1950s, and you look at the area of Ireland, which is pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes 2 hours to drive from one end to the other. It's a small country, and within that, an even smaller part, which is the sort of the Irish ore field, as they call it, you get this metric number 1 in terms of zinc found per square kilometer.
Wow.
So there's no other place in the world like it. There's an old ocean, this is going back a little bit, but 450 million years ago, there was an ocean called the Iapetus Sea, and it basically closed right over top of where Limerick is, and it's a line that goes basically from Limerick to Dublin, more or less.
Wow.
And it runs sort of east-west-ish across the country. And to the north, you have all the rocks that more resemble Canadian rocks, and to the south, rocks that more resemble European rocks.
Wow.
So you have this meeting place, basically, and that means that there's essentially deep faults, ancient deep faults, which tapped really, really deep into the crust, and who knows, maybe even into the mantle, that drew a lot of fluids that had metal in them, and those fluids moved upwards, as fluids like to do, and they hit, around that time there was a lot of these nice, it was a great place to vacation back in those days, so you had nice, shallow, warm seas, raining down all these brachiopods and coral reefs and things like that. So you had hundreds and hundreds of meters of limestones built
Tropical
up.
Ireland.
Tropical Ireland. It was very tropical. It was a great place to vacation back 450 million years ago. So now
when I met you, you were a uranium analyst.
Yeah.
And now you're in the zinc space. I guess. Yeah. So you started Group 11.
Yeah.
How long ago?
4 years.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And what kind of inspired you? How did you go from being a uranium analyst and then moving to Ireland and now you're in this zinc space? What kind of what spawned the creation of Group 11? And also, how did you get the name Group 11? Where did that come from?
So Group 11 is periodic table. It's not Ocean's 11 or anything like that.
Okay.
It's the first asset we acquired was a copper silver asset right beside Glencore's Piles Green deposit, regionally speaking, and that happens to be the Group 11 of the periodic table. So that's pretty boring, unfortunately, side of the story.
The scientific nerdy part of it.
Yeah, it's pretty nerdy name, but it works. Cool. I like it, so we kind of kept it. In terms of why I started Group 11 initially, I was basically at a broker called Davy. It's Ireland's largest broker. And they were very good to sort of bring me on when Anne, my wife, wanted to move to Ireland. For family reasons, she wanted to be back home. And I was basically saying, okay, well, let's see if I can get a comparable position to Raymond James as an analyst over there. And Davy was good enough to say, come on over. We'll find something that works. And we decided that I was going to cover the gold names, the UK listed gold names like Randgold, Sentiment, Acacia, Randgold, which was fine, but then they wanted me to basically initiate it on larger names that have more trading capacity, right? So we decided Rio Tinto would be a good one to pick up coverage on. Okay. And that's no small task to build a model from scratch on Rio Tinto, one of the largest mining companies in the world. So that took a long time. I was touring, it was very interesting, I was touring steel plants in Austria and Germany, which is fantastic. It's a good learning experience. But it was getting further and further away from my core passion, which is exploration, always has been. Yeah. So basically I left Davy to start Group 11. At that stage, I saw the zinc supply-demand fundamentals turning in a very attractive direction. I knew this is zinc country, this is great zinc country here, one of the richest places in the world for zinc. And I knew John Barry, because I helped John with Rathdowney as part of Raymond James. Raymond James helped him on when he was doing his IPO a few years back. So it was just a fantastic sort of 1, 2, 3, and things fell into place. And John, and then his colleague from Rathdowney, David Furlong, was also just available. He had stepped off of Rathdowney. The project was switching more from exploration to mine development, so he was available, and the three of us basically came together early 2015, and here we are.
Neat. Yeah. So let's maybe get a couple stats on Group 11. So you're a publicly traded company.
Yep.
Where do you trade?
We're on the TSXV as of December 2017.
Yeah.
So relatively new. I mean, Spiro just came on 6-7 months ago. Spiro Kakos he's our Vice President of Investor Relations, to really start getting the word out, I guess, or getting known, because we really weren't known as a brand new company.
What was the trading symbol?
ZNG.
ZNG?
ZNG on V. And then we listed on the OTC a few months back. We're on Frankfurt. And that's, who knows, maybe we'll list in Dublin someday as well.
Okay. And what's your share price trading at today, roughly?
I usually check the share price once a day, so yesterday was 15 cents roughly. Okay. So I try not to get too.
And what's that relate to in market value?
Market cap is about call it $8 million, $9 million Canadian.
Okay. How about owners in your company? Like, is there any from what you can disclose? Is there anything notable there?
Yeah, I mean, it's all publicly available information on our IPO prospectus. So myself, John Barry, Dave Furlong, and the founders of the company, we all own, and a few other people in the company own 15% of the company. Okay.
That would be described as like insiders, I guess you could say.
We're insiders. We're on SETI, so anything you can track all of us. We've been buyers of the stock over. Since the inception of the company, and continue to buy as a public company as well. Mag Silver owns 15.8% of us. Tech owns about 5.8% of us. And then we have a number of institutions in the door, which constitute, there's about a dozen institutions that constitute about 10% of the pie. And then the rest are high net worth individuals, accredited investors, mostly from Canada, but also from the US and Ireland and some in England.
Okay. Now, I know in light of time, we've got to, I just want to drill down to one of your projects, which is Stonepark, because I hear you talk about Stonepark a lot.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you're excited about it?
Well, I think it's one of the most exciting zinc exploration plays out there that I've seen. I think a lot of people would agree with me in that statement. I think it's
what makes it exciting?
Well, the fact that you've already discovered some serious tonnage. Glencore's got 44 million tons at 8.4%, and we're literally touching that deposit with our deposit, which is 5 million tons at 11%. And
when you say 5 million tons at 11, what does 11% represent?
Sorry, yeah, zinc and lead percentage combined. So if you just purely add the amount of, so say you have a cube of rock, what percent of that rock is metal?
Oh, gotcha. And is 11%, just for those folks listening and not maybe knowing,
good, bad, or ugly? Yeah, it's basically good.
It's good.
Just to simplify things. Yeah. I mean,
could you ever have something that was like 90%?
Never.
No. Oh, okay.
You couldn't. Stoichiometrically, it's impossible to go beyond 60%. That's a fancy chemical term I just used there.
Yeah,
that just basically
sounds good though.
Yeah, it's it basically means that the chemical, the crystal structure can only hold so much zinc in with the sulfides, basically. So, but effectively, so you can get up to maybe 60%. That would be the highest you can go. But 10% is pretty darn high. Yeah. From a global perspective. So,
like when you look at most mines mining zinc today, what percentage are they running at typically?
I mean, I think I would guess around 7 to 10% would be the global average. Would be somewhere in there. Yeah. And I think if you're batting above 10%, you're doing pretty well. Yeah. Yeah.
What are other things about Stonepark beyond the size of the resource?
Yeah. Well, I would say basically that the two deposits that are side by side are just the outside of the system, and we think they're the heart of the system, which we basically have this volcanic complex. It's like a big circle. Yeah. And inside that circle, think of it as a mushroom cap. Yeah. And we're looking for the stem. If we find that stem that has some potential to be at least as good, if not better, than what's been found to date in that camp.
Wow.
So
great. It's early February right now, 2019. What have you got kind of on the docket as far as activity and that you can speak to coming up here in the next couple of months or next year? What is your plan for?
Yeah, so we're currently drilling at Stonepark, predominantly for geology, but if we hit some mineralization, great. So watch out for that sometime in March, probably towards the end of March. If we're lucky, we'll get it out before PDAC. But so there's some drill results coming. The government's flying a big airborne survey over our ground there. So watch out for that, probably, I would say, sometime mid this year. So I call it the summertime. Then we're embarking on a big drill program in Ballinalat, which is our second property. But there we've already got everything done. We know exactly where we need to drill. Yeah. So that's going to be coming, a news release on that, hopefully, to talk about exactly what we're going to be doing there. Might be forthcoming over the next few months. And then drilling at Stonepark to, drill for discovery as opposed to geology structure, drill for discovery in the fall this year on Stonepark. So I think we've got two really good shots at creating some serious, hopefully some good shareholder value.
Well, great. Well, that sounds very exciting, Bart, and I hope, wish you the best of luck. I think in the mining space, luck sounds like is a factor in what happens. So hopefully you got lots of that. And look, I appreciate you coming on episode 1 of podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
no, it's been great.
Look forward to having you come again. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Perfect. Thanks, Bart.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay. Bye bye.
Cheers.